Jake stared at his empty bank account for the third time that morning. $27.43. That was all he had left after paying his tuition fees. His tiny apartment near the university was costing him way too much, but he loved living alone. Well, he used to love it. Now it felt more like a luxury he couldn't afford. He grabbed his laptop and typed out a roommate ad for the 100th time. Graduate student looking for clean, quiet roommate. Must respect study time. No parties. Serious inquiries only. He hit post and sighed. Most people who answered these ads were either too messy, too loud, or too weird. Last week, someone wanted to keep pet snakes in the living room. 3 days passed with no decent responses. Jake was starting to panic. His landlord had already given him a warning about late rent. Then his phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Hi, I saw your roommate, AD. I'm very clean and quiet. Currently working on research projects. Would like to see the apartment today if possible. Zara." Jake blinked at the message. It was so formal and polite compared to the usual, "Yo dude, is the room still available?" texts he got. He quickly replied, "Sure, how about 3 p.m.? "Perfect. I'll be there exactly at 3 p.m. Exactly at 3 p.m. Not around 3 p.m. or 3-ish. Jake found that oddly specific, but at least she seemed punctual. When the doorbell rang at exactly 3, Jake opened the door and nearly forgot how to speak. The woman standing there was absolutely stunning. She had silver hair that seemed to shimmer in the afternoon light, and her eyes were the most unusual shade of purple he'd ever seen. She was tall and graceful, wearing a simple white dress that somehow looked expensive. "You must be Jake," she said with a slight smile. Her voice had a musical quality to it. "I'm Zara." Yeah, hi," Jake managed, stepping aside to let her in. "Come on in." Zara walked through the apartment slowly, examining everything with intense focus. She ran her fingers along the walls, checked the windows, and even looked up at the ceiling corners. Jake found it strange, but figured maybe she was just very thorough. "The kitchen gets good morning light," Jake said, trying to make conversation. "And the living room is pretty spacious for the price." "Yes, the natural light exposure is excellent," Zara replied, still examining the window frames. "And the structural integrity seems sound." Who talks about structural integrity when looking at an apartment, Jake wondered. But she seemed genuinely interested, which was more than he could say for his other potential roommates. "So, what kind of research do you do?" Jake asked as they walked toward the spare bedroom. Zara paused for just a moment before answering. "Anthropological studies, human behavior patterns, social interactions, that sort of thing." "Cool, that's really interesting. I'm working on my astronomy degree." Something flickered across Zara's face when he said astronomy, but it was gone so quickly Jake thought he might have imagined it. "The bedroom has a good view," Jake continued, opening the door. "And there's plenty of closet space." Zara nodded approvingly. "This will work perfectly for my needs. What are your house rules?" Jake was relieved she asked. "Well, I study a lot, especially at night, so I need it pretty quiet. I'm not much of a party person. I keep the common areas clean and expect the same. Oh, and I usually cook dinner around 7 if you want to share groceries and cooking duties." "I prefer to handle my own meals," Zara said quickly. "But I'm very quiet and clean. I also keep unusual hours for my research, so you might not see me much during typical social times." Perfect, Jake thought. A roommate who kept to herself would be ideal. "Do you have references?" Jake asked, trying to sound responsible. Zara pulled out her phone and showed him a list of contacts. The names looked normal enough, though Jake noticed. All the phone numbers had the same unusual area code he didn't recognize. "I can provide character references, but I should mention I've only recently moved to this area for my research position. My previous housing was temporary." Something about her explanation felt rehearsed, but Jake was getting desperate. She seemed responsible. She was offering to pay her half of the rent up front, and honestly, having such an attractive roommate wouldn't exactly be a hardship. "Okay, well, if you want the room, "It's yours," Jake said. "When can you move in?" "Today, if that's acceptable." "I don't have many belongings." Jake raised an eyebrow. "Today? Don't you need to think about it or anything?" "I'm very good at making quick decisions," Zara replied with that slight smile again. 2 hours later, Zara returned with exactly 3 suitcases and a small metal case that looked almost like a briefcase. Jake offered to help carry things, but she politely declined and handled everything herself. He noticed she didn't seem to struggle with the weight at all, which was impressive considering how heavy those suitcases looked. Over the next few weeks, Jake began to notice some unusual things about his new roommate. She never seemed to eat anything he could identify. He'd hear her in the kitchen sometimes, but when he checked later, there were never any dirty dishes or leftover smells. She claimed she preferred organic, raw foods and liked to eat in her room while working. Zara also never seemed to get cold or hot. Jake would be bundling up in sweaters during the chilly autumn evenings, while Zara walked around in the same light dresses she always wore. When he mentioned it, she just said she had excellent circulation. Her sleep schedule was completely backwards from his. Jake would hear her moving around at night, sometimes talking quietly on the phone in what sounded like a foreign language he couldn't identify. When he asked about it, she explained she was collaborating with international researchers in different time zones. The strangest thing was how she seemed to know stuff she shouldn't know, like when Jake was struggling with a complex astrophysics problem. She casually mentioned a solution method he'd never heard of. When he looked it up later, it turned out to be a cutting-edge theory that had only been published in obscure academic journals. "How did you know about quantum field fluctuations in stellar formation?" Jake asked her one evening. Zara looked up from her laptop, and for just a second, her eyes seemed to flash with an inner light. "Oh, I read widely. Anthropology intersects with many fields." Despite these oddities, Jake found himself really enjoying living with Zara. She was incredibly intelligent and had fascinating perspectives on everything from human social dynamics to cosmic phenomena. Their conversations over morning coffee became the highlight of his day. She had this way of looking at ordinary things like they were completely new and amazing. Watching her experience her first autumn thunderstorm was like seeing someone discover rain for the first time. She stood by the window for hours, completely mesmerized by the lightning. Jake also noticed that Zara seemed to study him sometimes when she thought he wasn't looking. Not in a creepy way, but with the same intense focus she applied to everything else. When he caught her, she'd just smile and ask him questions about his research or his day. As the weeks passed, Jake realized he was developing feelings for his roommate. She was beautiful, brilliant, and mysterious in a way that made him want to know everything about her. But he also respected their living arrangement and didn't want to make things weird by hitting on her. Besides, someone like Zara could probably date anyone she wanted. What would she want with a broke graduate student who spent most of his time staring at star charts? One evening, Jake was working on his telescope setup on the apartment balcony when Zara joined him. She stood quietly beside him, looking up at the stars with an expression he couldn't quite read. "Do you ever wonder if we're alone out there?" Jake asked, adjusting the telescope focus. Zara was quiet for so long he thought she hadn't heard him. Then she said softly, "I think the universe is far more connected than most people realize. Distance doesn't always mean isolation." Something in her tone made Jake look at her more closely. In the starlight, her silver hair seemed to shimmer with its own glow, and her purple eyes reflected the night sky like mirrors. "Sometimes I feel like you're from another world," Jake said jokingly. Zara turned to meet his gaze, and for a moment, the air between them seemed to crackle with electricity. "Would that frighten you?" she asked seriously. "No," Jake replied, surprising himself with how quickly he answered. "I think it would be amazing." Zara smiled, but there was something sad in her expression. "You might be the first person to say that." That night, Jake lay in bed thinking about their conversation. There was definitely something unusual about Zara. But whatever it was, he found himself caring about her more each day. She was becoming less of a roommate and more of someone he couldn't imagine living without. He had no idea that in her room, Zara was staring at a small device that was blinking with urgent red lights, trying to decide whether to answer the incoming message that would change everything between them. Jake woke up to the sound of something crashing in the kitchen. He checked his phone, 3:17 a.m. Zara was usually quiet during her late-night activities, so this was unusual. He threw on a t-shirt and padded out to check on her. "Zara, everything. Okay?" he called softly. "Fine. Everything's fine," came her voice from the kitchen, but it sounded strained. "Just knocked over a glass. Sorry to wake you." Jake found her standing by the sink, picking up pieces of what looked like his favorite coffee mug. In the dim light from the window, her hair seemed to be glowing more than usual. "Hey, don't worry about it," Jake said, moving to help. "I'll get the broom." "No," Zara said sharply, then caught herself. "I mean, I've got it. You should go back to sleep." Jake paused. Zara never snapped at him like that. She seemed really on edge about something. "Are you sure you're all right? You seem stressed." When Zara looked up at him, Jake could swear her eyes flashed with a bright light for just a second, like someone had shined a flashlight behind them. "I'm just tired," she said, but her hands were shaking as she threw the mug pieces in the trash. "Long research session tonight." Jake wanted to push, but Zara was already heading back to her room. "Okay, well, try to get some sleep," he called after her. The next morning, Jake noticed Zara hadn't come out for her usual morning coffee. He knocked gently on her door around noon. "Zara, I made extra coffee if you want some." "Thank you, but I'm not feeling well today," came her muffled voice through the door. "I think I need to rest." This was weird. In the 2 months she'd been living there, Zara had never been sick. She never even seemed tired. Jake pressed his ear to the door and could hear her moving around restlessly, like she couldn't sit still. "Do you need anything? Medicine? Soup?" Jake offered. "No, just space. Please." Jake backed away from the door, feeling hurt and confused. Had he done something wrong? Their conversation on the balcony had felt so natural and close. Now she was avoiding him completely. Over the next few days, Zara's behavior got even stranger. She would come out of her room looking perfectly fine, chat with Jake normally for a few minutes, then suddenly get this panicked look and rush back to her room. Sometimes Jake would catch her staring at him with an intense expression, like she was trying to solve a complex puzzle. The weirdest part was that Jake started having vivid dreams. Not normal dreams, but ones that felt incredibly real. He dreamed about flying through space, seeing planets and stars up close. He dreamed about a beautiful world with silver trees and purple skies. Most strangely, he kept dreaming about Zara, but she looked different. Her skin had a faint shimmer, and there were delicate patterns across her face that looked like constellations. Jake also started noticing that he could predict Zara's moods. If she was anxious, he'd feel restless without knowing why. If she was in her room feeling sad, he'd suddenly get melancholy while watching TV. It was like their emotions were somehow connected. One evening, Jake was studying at the kitchen table when Zara emerged from her room looking frazzled. Her usually perfect hair was messy, and she seemed to be having trouble walking straight. "Hey," Jake said, closing his textbook. "You look terrible. No offense." Zara laughed, but it sounded shaky. "Thanks for the honesty." She moved to the refrigerator, but just stood there staring at it like she'd forgotten what she wanted. Jake watched her with growing concern. "Seriously, what's going on with you lately? Are you sick? Stressed about work?" "It's complicated," Zara said, still not looking at him. "Try me. I'm pretty good with complicated." Zara turned around, and Jake was startled to see that her eyes looked brighter than usual. Not just the color, but like there was actual light coming from them. "You wouldn't understand," she said softly. "Maybe not, but I'd like to try. We're friends, right? You can talk to me. For a moment, Zara looked like she was about to say something important. Then her phone buzzed and she grabbed it quickly. Jake caught a glimpse of the screen. It wasn't showing a normal text message. Instead, there were symbols he'd never seen before, glowing in different colors. "I have to take this," Zara said, hurrying back toward her room. But as she passed Jake's chair, she stumbled. Jake instinctively reached out to steady her, grabbing her arm. The moment his skin touched hers, Jake felt like he'd been struck by lightning. Not painful, but intense and electric. Images flashed through his mind, stars, alien landscapes, and a profound sense of longing for something far away. At the same time, he felt Zara's emotions as clearly as his own. Fear, confusion, and something that felt like homesickness. Zara gasped and pulled away, staring at Jake with wide eyes. "What was that?" Jake asked, his heart racing. I saw..." "Nothing," Zara said quickly, but her voice was shaking. "Just static electricity." "That wasn't static electricity, Zara. What's happening to us?" Zara looked torn between running away and telling him something. Jake could actually feel her internal struggle, which should have been impossible. "I can sense what you're feeling," Jake said slowly. "Right now, you're scared, and you want to tell me something, but you're afraid I'll react badly." Zara's face went pale. "That shouldn't be possible." "But it is happening, and I've been having these dreams about space, about you, but you look different, and your eyes are literally glowing right now." Zara raised her hands to her face. "Are they really?" "Yeah, they are. It's actually kind of beautiful, but also impossible. Unless..." Jake paused, his scientific mind trying to process what he was seeing. "Unless you're not entirely human." The words hung in the air between them. Zara looked like she might faint. "That's crazy," she whispered, but she didn't deny it. "Is it? Because it would explain a lot. The weird eating habits, never getting hot or cold, knowing things you shouldn't know, being able to lift heavy stuff like it weighs nothing." Jake stood up slowly, like he was approaching a scared animal. "Zara, what are you?" Before she could answer, her phone started making a sound unlike anything Jake had ever heard. It was like music and static combined, beautiful, but alien. Zara looked at the screen and her face filled with panic. "I have to go," she said, heading for her room. "Wait!" Jake called, following her. "Don't shut me out. Whatever this is, we can figure it out together." Zara stopped at her doorway and turned back to him. Her eyes were definitely glowing now, and Jake could see faint patterns starting to appear. On her skin, just like in his dreams. "You don't understand, Jake. This isn't just about me anymore. Something's happening to both of us, and I don't know how to stop it." "Then don't stop it," Jake said, surprising himself. "Maybe it's supposed to happen. You don't know what you're saying. Maybe not, but I know I trust you. And I know that, whatever you are, wherever you're from, I care about you." Zara stared at him for a long moment. The patterns on her skin were becoming more visible, forming delicate designs that reminded Jake of star maps. "My people warned me this could happen," she said quietly. "They said I was spending too much time around humans, getting too close. But I didn't listen." "Your people?" Zara took a deep breath. "Jake, I'm not from Earth. I'm here conducting research, and I was supposed to leave before." She gestured helplessly at herself. "Before this started happening." "Before what started happening?" "It's called the bonding season. It happens to my species periodically, and being near someone you have feelings for can trigger a connection. That's..." She struggled for words. "Very intense." Jake felt his heart skip. "You have feelings for me?" "That's not the point right now," Zara said, but he could feel through their weird connection that the answer was yes. "The point is that we're somehow linking together, and I don't know what it means for you." Jake stepped closer. "What if I'm okay with finding out?" You can't be serious. I've never been more serious about anything. Zara, I don't care if you're an alien. I care about you. Zara's phone made that strange sound again, more urgently this time. She looked at it, and her expression changed to one of real fear. That's my supervisor, she said. The bonding process is accelerating faster than normal. There's a solar storm coming that's going to make communication impossible for days. What does that mean? It means we're about to be completely cut off from my people, and this thing between us is going to get much stronger. Jake reached out his hand. Then we face it together. Zara looked at his outstretched hand, then at his face. You really have no idea what you're getting into. Probably not. But I'd rather figure it out with you than wonder what might have been. As the strange music from Zara's phone grew louder and more insistent, she slowly reached out and took Jake's hand. The electric sensation was stronger this time, but Jake held on tight. Okay, Zara whispered. But when this is over, you might not be entirely human anymore either. Jake squeezed her hand gently. Right now, that doesn't sound like the worst thing in the world. Jake stared at Zara's glowing phone as the alien music continued playing. The patterns on her skin were becoming brighter, creating beautiful designs that looked like living tattoos made of starlight. So you're really an alien, Jake said, still holding her hand. Like from outer space. From a planet called Celestria, actually, Zara replied, watching his face carefully for signs of fear or disgust. It's about 47 light years from here. Jake nodded slowly, like she'd just told him she was from Canada. Okay. And you came here to study humans? Yes. My species is very advanced, but we're curious about how other intelligent life develops. I was supposed to observe human behavior patterns for 6 months, then return home. But something went wrong? Zara sighed, and Jake felt her frustration through their strange connection. Everything went wrong. I wasn't supposed to get emotionally involved with my research subjects, especially not like this. Jake looked down at their joined hands. Her skin felt warm and somehow electric. What exactly is this bonding thing you mentioned? It's complicated. When Celestrians reach a certain age, we go through periods where we form deep connections with compatible partners. It's not just physical. It's emotional, mental, even spiritual. The bond becomes permanent. Permanent how? We share thoughts, emotions, memories. We can sense each other across great distances. Our lifespans become connected. Zara pulled her hand away gently. Jake, if this process completes, you won't be fully human anymore. Instead of being scared, Jake found himself curious. What would I become? Part Celestrian. You'd live much longer, maybe centuries. You'd be able to sense emotions like I do, maybe even develop other abilities. But you'd also never be able to form the same kind of relationships with other humans. Because I'd be bonded to you? Because you'd be bonded to me, Zara confirmed. Jake, this isn't a casual relationship we're talking about. If we complete this bond, we're connected for life. Jake was quiet for a moment, processing everything. Through their connection, he could feel Zara's anxiety, her fear that he would reject her now that he knew the truth. How long do I have to decide? He asked. That's the problem. The bonding process has already started. It began the moment I started having feelings for you, and it got stronger when we touched. Now that we've made physical contact during the bonding season, it's accelerating on its own. As if to prove her point, Jake suddenly felt a wave of dizziness. For a second, he could swear he saw through Zara's eyes, looking at himself from her perspective. Whoa, he said, steadying himself against the wall. Did I just see myself through your eyes? Yes. It's going to get stronger. Jake, I need to try to contact my people. Maybe they can find a way to stop this before it goes too far. Zara hurried to her room and returned with the small metal case Jake had seen when she moved in. Inside was a device that looked like nothing he'd ever seen. smooth, translucent, with lights moving inside it like liquid stars. This is my communication device, Zara explained, pressing symbols on its surface. I should be able to reach the research station. But instead of the musical sounds Jake expected, the device made harsh, static-filled noises. Zara frowned and tried again. What's wrong? Jake asked. I'm not getting through. The solar storm must have started early. Zara's expression grew worried. Jake, solar radiation interferes with our communication technology. If the storm is strong enough, I might not be able to contact them for days. And in the meantime, this bonding thing keeps getting stronger? Yes. And without guidance from my people, I don't know how to slow it down or stop it safely. Jake sat down on the couch, trying to wrap his head around everything. An hour ago, his biggest worry was passing his astrophysics exam. Now he was apparently in the middle of an alien bonding ritual that could change his entire species. Tell me more about your people, he said. What are they like? Zara seemed surprised by the question. You want to know about Celestrians? Well, if I'm going to potentially become part Celestrian, I should probably understand what that means. Zara sat down beside him, and Jake immediately felt calmer. Their emotional connection was definitely getting stronger. We're an old species, she began. We've been exploring space for thousands of years. We value knowledge, harmony, and deep emotional connections. Most Celestrians form bonds with others of our kind, but occasionally we connect with compatible species from other worlds. Has this happened before? A Celestrian bonding with a human? Not that I know of. Humans are still relatively new to us. You're only the second intelligent species we've encountered that forms emotional attachments similar to ours. Jake felt honored and terrified at the same time. So, I'd be like a test case? More like a bridge, Zara said softly. If our species can successfully bond, it could mean greater cooperation between our worlds in the future. They sat in silence, for a while, both lost in thought. Jake could feel Zara's emotions swirling, hope, fear, guilt, and something deeper that felt like love. Can I ask you something? Jake said. Of course. Do you actually have feelings for me, or is this just some biological process? Zara turned to face him fully. Jake, the bonding process can only begin between individuals who have genuine emotional compatibility. My species can't form these connections with just anyone. So you do have feelings for me? I've had feelings for you almost from the day I moved in. The way you get excited about the stars, how gentle you are with everything around you, your curiosity about the world. I wasn't supposed to feel these things, but I couldn't help it. Jake felt his heart racing. I've had feelings for you, too. I kept telling myself it was just because you're beautiful, but it's more than that. You see everything with such wonder, like the whole world is new and amazing. Being around you makes me feel more alive. As they looked at each other, Jake felt another wave of that electric sensation. This time, he could actually hear Zara's thoughts for a moment. He's not afraid. He actually cares about me, not just my appearance or the mystery. He sees me. I just heard your thoughts, Jake said softly. And I can feel how much you mean what you're saying, Zara replied. Jake, if we keep this up, there won't be any going back. What if I don't want to go back? You don't understand what you'd be giving up. Your normal human life, relationships. With your family and friends, your future plans, everything would change. Jake thought about his life. He was a broke graduate student with no close friends, distant relationships with his family, and no real idea what he wanted to do after graduation. The most meaningful relationship he'd ever had was with his alien roommate. Maybe change isn't such a bad thing, he said. Besides, I'm studying astronomy because I've always felt like I belonged somewhere else. Maybe this is where I belong. Zara's device suddenly made a different sound, not the musical communication tone, but a warning beep. What's that? Jake asked. Zara checked the device and her face went pale. It's detecting massive solar flare activity. The storm is going to be much stronger than expected. What does that mean for us? It means the electromagnetic radiation is going to accelerate the bonding process significantly. Jake, we might only have a few hours before the connection becomes irreversible. Jake felt panic rising, but not from himself. It was coming from Zara. Her fear was so strong it was making his hands shake. "Hey," he said, taking her hands again. "We'll figure this out." "But what if we can't? What if I'm trapped here forever and you're stuck being something you never chose to be?" "Zara, look at me." Jake waited until she met his eyes. "I've been thinking about this the whole time you've been explaining everything. Yes, it's scary and weird and completely unexpected. But you know what? The best things in my life have always been unexpected." "This is different, Jake. This is permanent. So is any real relationship if you think about it. When people get married, they're committing to being connected forever too. But they don't literally share consciousness. Maybe not, but they share everything else that matters. Look, I don't know what's going to happen, but I know I'd rather face the unknown with you than go back to being alone." Through their connection, Jake felt Zara's surprise at his words. She hadn't expected him to be so accepting. "You really mean that?" she asked. "I really do." "Besides," Jake grinned, "how many people get the chance to be part of first contact between two species? This is like every science fiction fan's dream come true." Despite everything, Zara laughed. "You're incredible. Any rational person would be running, away screaming. Good thing I'm not entirely rational then." The device beeped again, more urgently this time. Outside, Jake could see the sky beginning to glow with unusual colors, the aurora effects of the solar storm. "It's starting," Zara said. "Jake, once this storm hits full strength, the bonding process is going to accelerate rapidly. Are you absolutely sure about this?" Jake looked at her glowing skin, her luminous eyes, and felt the electric connection humming between them. For the first time in his life, he felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. "I'm sure," he said. "Let's see what happens when a human and a Celestian fall in love." As if in response to his words, the aurora outside grew brighter, and Jake felt their connection deepen even further. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The aurora outside their apartment was getting brighter by the minute. Jake had never seen anything like it. Waves of green, blue, and purple light dancing across the sky like a cosmic light show. But what was happening inside the apartment was even more incredible. Every time Jake looked at Zara, the connection between them grew stronger. He could feel her emotions as clearly as his own now, and occasionally he'd catch glimpses of her memories. He saw her home planet for the first time. A beautiful world with silver forests and cities that seemed to be made of crystal and light. "Is that really what Celestria looks like?" Jake asked, touching his temple where the visions seemed to come from. "You're seeing my memories," Zara said, wonder in her voice. "That shouldn't be possible yet. The bond is moving much faster than normal." Jake felt a rush of homesickness that wasn't his own. Through their connection, he experienced Zara's longing for her home world, her family, and the life she'd left behind to come to Earth. "You miss it," he said softly. "More than I thought I would. I've been away for almost a year now, and I didn't expect to feel so isolated." Zara looked at him curiously. "But since we've been connecting like this, I don't feel alone anymore." Jake smiled. "Neither do I. I've been alone most of my life, even when I was around other people. But with you, it's like I finally found someone who understands me." As if responding to their emotional connection, the patterns on Zara's skin began to glow brighter. Jake watched in fascination as the constellation-like designs shifted and moved across her arms and face. "Does it hurt?" he asked. "No, it feels warm, like being in sunlight." Zara examined her own hands. "Jake, I need to warn you about something. As the bond completes, you're going to start changing too. What kind of changes? Physical ones, mostly. Your senses will become much stronger. You might develop some of our abilities. And... She hesitated. And what? You'll probably start to look a little different. Not dramatically, but enough that people might notice. Jake thought about this. Different? How? Your eyes might change color, maybe develop some luminosity. Your hair might take on some of our characteristics. Nothing that would make you look completely non-human, but enough to show the bond. Honestly? That sounds kind of cool. Zara laughed, and Jake felt her amazement through their connection. You're taking this better than any Celestrian would. Most of my people spend months preparing for a bonding ceremony. Well, I'm not most people, apparently. Just then, Jake felt a strange tingling sensation start in his fingertips and spread up his arms. He looked down and saw faint silver lines beginning to appear on his skin, similar to Zara's patterns, but uniquely his own. Is this normal? He asked. Zara took his hands and examined the emerging patterns. It's beautiful, she breathed. Jake, these markings represent your connection to me, but they're also showing your own personality and spirit. Look. Jake looked closer and realized the patterns weren't random. They formed shapes that reminded him of star charts and mathematical equations, things that had always fascinated him. They're like a map of who you are, Zara explained. In Celestrian culture, bonding patterns are considered sacred. They show the true nature of the connection between two people. As the solar storm intensified outside, Jake found he could hear Zara's thoughts more clearly. He experienced her memories of growing up on Celestria, learning about other worlds, and volunteering for the Earth research mission. He felt her excitement when she first saw his apartment listing, and her nervousness about living with a human. In return, Zara was experiencing his memories. She saw his childhood fascination with the stars, his loneliness growing up, and his dreams of discovering life beyond Earth. You always knew, didn't you? Zara said softly. Even as a child, you felt like you belonged somewhere else. Yeah, I did. I used to stare at the sky for hours, wondering if there was someone out there looking back at me. There was, Zara smiled. I was looking at Earth through our telescopes, wondering what it would be like to meet a human. The emotional intensity of sharing so many memories and feelings was overwhelming, but in a good way. Jake felt like he was finally understanding not just Zara, but himself. Through her perspective, he saw his own strengths and qualities he'd never noticed before. Is this what love feels like for your people? Jake asked. This is deeper than what most Celestrians experience, Zara replied. Usually, bonding happens between people of the same species who have similar thought patterns. What we're sharing is something completely new. Jake could feel the truth in her words. Their connection was creating something unique, a bridge between human emotion and Celestrian consciousness. As the night wore on, they sat together on the couch, sometimes talking, sometimes just experiencing the flow of thoughts and feelings between them. Jake learned about Celestrian art, music, and philosophy. Zara discovered human concepts of humor, creativity, and resilience. Your species is remarkable, Zara said during one of their conversations. Celestrians are peaceful and logical, but humans have this incredible capacity for growth and adaptation. You face challenges by finding creative solutions instead of just applying existing knowledge. And your people have this amazing ability to connect with others, Jake replied. Humans spend their whole lives trying to truly understand each other, but you can actually share consciousness. It's incredible. Around midnight, Jake felt a significant shift in their connection. Suddenly, he could sense not just Zara's current emotions, but her presence itself. Even when he closed his eyes, he knew exactly where she was and how she was feeling. The bond is stabilizing, Zara explained. We're reaching the point where it becomes permanent. How do you feel about that? Jake asked. terrified and thrilled. At the same time, she admitted, I never expected to find someone who would accept me so completely, especially a human. My people warned me that other species might fear us or try to use our abilities. I could never fear you, Jake said. You're the most amazing person I've ever met, human or otherwise. Through their connection, Jake felt Zara's heart flutter at his words. He also felt her deep-seated worry about what would happen when her people finally made contact again. What are you worried about? He asked. My supervisors might not approve of what's happened. Unauthorized bonding with an alien species could be seen as a violation of research protocols. But we're both adults making our own choices. Celestrian society is very structured. We don't often deviate from established procedures. Zara sighed. I don't know what they'll do when they find out. Jake squeezed her hand. Whatever happens, we'll face it together. That's what partners do, right? Partners, Zara repeated, smiling. I like the sound of that. As dawn approached, the solar storm began to calm down. The aurora outside faded, and Zara's communication device started making softer, more musical sounds. They're trying to contact me, Zara said, looking at the device nervously. Are you going to answer? I have to. But Jake, once I tell them what's happened, everything is going to change. They might want to take me back to Celestria immediately, or send a ship to study. You or... Hey, Jake interrupted gently. Remember what we talked about? Whatever happens, we handle it together. Zara nodded, taking a deep breath. Together. She activated the communication device, and strange, beautiful music filled the room. Jake couldn't understand the language, but through their bond, he could sense the conversation. Zara's supervisor was surprised, concerned, and very curious about the human she'd bonded with. After a long conversation, Zara ended the communication and turned to Jake. Well, he asked. They want to meet you, she said, her voice a mixture of excitement and nervousness. A delegation is coming to Earth to assess the situation and decide what happens next. When? 3 days. Jake felt his stomach flip. In 3 days, he would meet actual aliens and find out if his relationship with Zara was going to be accepted by her people. Are you ready for this? Zara asked. Jake looked at her glowing skin, her luminous eyes, and the love he could feel radiating from her through their bond. Then he looked at his own hands, where silver patterns now marked him as something more than human. With you, I'm ready for anything. Outside, the sun was rising on what would be their last normal day together. Tomorrow, their story would become something much bigger than just a romance between roommates. It would become the first chapter in a new relationship between two worlds. 3 days later, Jake stood on the roof of their apartment building, watching the sky with a mixture of excitement and terror. Zara was beside him, holding his hand as they waited for her people to arrive. The silver patterns on both of their skin were glowing softly in the evening light. How exactly do Celestrians travel? Jake asked, trying to calm his nerves. Our ships use quantum tunneling technology. They don't fly through space the way your science fiction movies show. They basically skip from one point to another instantly. So, we won't see them coming? Not until they're already here. As if on cue, the air above them shimmered like heat waves, and suddenly a sleek, crystalline ship materialized about 50 feet above the building. It was beautiful, translucent and flowing, like it had been grown rather than built. Wow, Jake breathed. That's incredible. 3 figures descended from the ship, floating down without any visible technology supporting them. They looked similar to Zara, but older, with more elaborate patterns on their skin and an aura of authority that made Jake stand up straighter. The center figure, a tall woman with silver hair that seemed to move in an unfelt breeze, spoke first. To Jake's surprise, she spoke in perfect English. Zara, Research Specialist Designation 7 Alpha 3, you have violated several protocols during your assignment. Jake felt Zara's nervousness spike through their bond. Yes, Supervisor Liana, I understand the seriousness of my actions. Do you? The supervisor's gaze shifted to Jake, and he felt like she was looking right through him. "And you must be the human who has bonded with our researcher." "I'm Jake," he said, trying to sound more confident than he felt. "And yes, I'm bonded with Zara. But before you blame her for anything, you should know that I wanted this to happen." The other two Celestrians exchanged glances. The supervisor, Liana, raised an eyebrow. "You wanted to bond with an alien species? Most beings require extensive preparation for such a significant transformation." "Maybe," Jake replied, "but I've never been interested in doing things the way most people do them. Besides, Zara is the most incredible person I've ever met. I couldn't be happier about what's happened between us." Through their bond, Jake felt Zara's surge of love and gratitude at his words. Liana studied Jake for a long moment. "Show me your bonding patterns." Jake rolled up his sleeves, revealing the intricate silver designs that now covered his arms. The patterns pulsed gently with his heartbeat. "Fascinating," said one of the other Celestrians, a younger-looking man with kind eyes. "The integration is remarkably complete for such a rapid bonding." "Indeed," Liana agreed. "And the pattern complexity suggests a very strong compatibility match. This is unexpected." "Supervisor," Zara said carefully, "I know I violated protocols, but the bonding began before I realized what was happening. By the time I understood the situation, it was too late to safely stop the process. Actually," the third Celestrian spoke for the first time, an elderly woman with wise eyes, "you may have done something extraordinary, Zara. We've been searching for compatible species for centuries. Humans may be the first we've encountered, with the emotional depth necessary for true bonding." Jake felt a spark of hope. "Does that mean we can stay together?" "That remains to be decided," Liana said. "But first, we need to understand the full extent of your transformation. Jake, may I examine your bond more closely?" "What does that involve?" "I'll need to touch your bonding patterns and sense the connection between you and Zara. It won't hurt, but you'll feel me in your mind briefly." Jake looked at Zara, who nodded encouragingly. "Okay." Liana approached and placed her hands on Jake's arms where the silver patterns were brightest. Immediately, Jake felt a foreign presence in his thoughts, but it wasn't invasive. Instead, it felt like someone carefully examining a beautiful piece of art. After a few moments, Liana stepped back with an expression of amazement. "Remarkable," she said. "Your bond isn't just stable, it's enhanced both of your abilities. Jake, you've developed empathic senses that rival our most gifted individuals. And Zara, your connection to human creativity has expanded your problem-solving capabilities significantly." "What does that mean?" Jake asked. "It means," said the elderly, Celestrian, "that your bond has created something new. You're not just a human with Celestrian abilities or a Celestrian with human emotions. You're something entirely unique." Zara squeezed Jake's hand. "Is that good or bad?" "It's unprecedented," Liana replied. "Which brings us to the question of what happens next." The supervisor began pacing slowly, her expression thoughtful. "Jake, you should understand that completing this bond means you can never return to being fully human. Your lifespan will be measured in centuries rather than decades. Your relationships with other humans will always be different because of your enhanced abilities." "I understand," Jake said. "But I've never fit in with most humans anyway. This feels like where I belong." "And Zara," Liana continued, "your research assignment is obviously complete. But your situation has changed dramatically. You have several options." "What are they?" Zara asked. "Option 1. Return to Celestria with Jake as our first human cultural exchange participant. You would both contribute to our understanding of interspecies bonding." Jake felt Zara's mixed emotions about this possibility. She missed her home, but she'd also grown to love Earth. "Option 2. Leanna continued, remain on Earth as our first permanent cultural ambassador, with Jake as your partner and liaison to human society. There's a third option, the elderly Celestrian added with a smile, one that might be most beneficial for everyone. What's that? Jake and Zara asked simultaneously. Divide your time between both worlds. 6 months on Earth, 6 months on Celestria. Jake could learn about our society and technology, while Zara continues studying human culture with him as her permanent research partner. Jake felt excitement bubble up inside him. I could actually visit another planet? With the right preparation and your enhanced physiology, absolutely, Leanna confirmed. Your bond with Zara would help you adapt to our environment. Zara looked at Jake with shining eyes. What do you think? Would you want to see my world? Are you kidding? I've dreamed about exploring space my entire life. But more importantly, I want to understand the place that made you who you are. The 3 Celestrian officials conferred quietly in their own language. Through their bond, Zara translated for Jake. They were impressed by his adaptability and his genuine care for her. Finally, Leanna turned back to them. The council has made a preliminary decision. Jake, you'll be offered the position of Earth's first interstellar cultural ambassador. Zara, you'll become our permanent Earth research specialist, with Jake as your co-investigator. Really? Zara asked, her voice full of hope. Really? But there are conditions. You'll both need to undergo additional training. Jake will need to learn our language, customs, and technology. Zara, you'll need to formalize your understanding of human society, and you'll both be responsible for facilitating future contact between our species. Jake felt like his heart might burst with excitement. When do we start? Immediately, smiled the kind-eyed Celestrian. We've brought some basic educational materials with us. Your first lesson begins tonight, as the Celestrian officials prepared. To return to their ship, Leanna approached Jake one more time. You should know, she said quietly, that what you and Zara have accomplished is truly remarkable. You've opened a door between our worlds that many thought would never exist. We just fell in love, Jake replied simply. Yes, Leanna smiled. And sometimes that's enough to change everything. 6 months later, Jake stood in the crystal gardens of Celestria, watching alien sunsets paint the sky in colors that had no names in any human language. Zara was beside him, pointing out the constellations visible from her homeworld. Do you ever miss your old life? She asked. Jake thought about his tiny apartment, his struggles with money and his loneliness. Then he looked at Zara, felt their bond humming between them, and thought about all the incredible things he'd learned and experienced. Never, he said honestly. This is better than any life I could have imagined. Back on Earth, their apartment had been transformed into an unofficial embassy. Human scientists worked alongside Celestrian researchers, sharing knowledge and building friendships across species lines. Jake and Zara's love story had become the foundation for something much bigger, a bridge between worlds. When they returned to Earth for their next 6-month stay, they found a gift waiting for them, a small plaque by their front door that read, Jake and Zara Martinez Celestine, Interstellar Cultural Ambassadors. Martinez Celestine? Jake asked, grinning. I thought we should combine our names, Zara said shyly. If that's okay with you. Jake pulled her into his arms, feeling their bond pulse with shared joy. I love it. Though I have to ask, do Celestrians have a concept of marriage? We have bonding ceremonies, Zara replied. They're quite beautiful. Would you like to have one? I thought we already did in a way. That was the emergency version. The formal ceremony involves both our peoples, celebration, and promises for the future. Jake looked around their apartment, their first home together, now the site of historic first contact between species. I can't think of anything I'd like more. As they planned their bonding ceremony, Jake reflected on how much his life had changed since that day he'd